Am I on? Shabbat Shalom. And welcome to Adat Elohim. I am Rabbi Michael Lotker, and it is my honor to be leading services this evening. I am a very long-time member of the synagogue, almost 40 years, and I am now the rabbi in the scholar in residence. So I'm delighted that we are all here. We will be beginning our service with a song. I apologize for the quality of my singing, which is nowhere near that of your cantor. And we're going to be beginning on page 128 with Hine Ma Tov, which is a song from the Psalms celebrating our joy and pleasure at being together. Hine Ma Tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Ma Tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. We will be continuing our service on page 121 with a reading, and then on page 120 with our blessing for the lighting of Shabbat candles. As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we by our lives give light to all who behold us, as their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light. Our blessing for the lighting of Shabbat candles, and I'll call Patricia Boyd to light the candles and recite the blessings.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu v'hadnu ner shel Shabbat.
Amen.
We continue on page 123 with the blessing that is actually, we often think of it as the Kaddish, the blessing over the wine.
But it's really blessing the Sabbath day using the wine as a vehicle for blessing. Page 123. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu. V'Shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon hinhilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit ki hu yom tehila lemikrai kodesh zecher l'tziat mitzrayim kivanu becharta v'yotanu kidashta mikol hamim V'Shabbat kodshecha b'ahava uvratzon hinhaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat l'chaim. We will be continuing on page 138 with Lecha Dodi. Lecha Dodi is a poem, a song, a piyut, written by the mystics of Sfat, who would wait in the hills for the sun to set, and they anticipated the arrival of the Shabbat with the same fervor and longing as a bridegroom would anticipate the arrival of his bride on their wedding night. Lecha dodi. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nikabla. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nikabla. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nikabla. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, hishmianu el hameyuchad, Adonai echad, u'shemo echad, l'shem u'tiferet lehitila. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nikabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki hi mekor habracha, merosh mikedem nesucha, sof ma'aseh b'machshavati la. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nikabela. Hitoreri, kiva orech kumi uri, shir daberi, kevod Adonai alayich nigla. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nikabela. Our custom on the last verse is to rise and face the door as we welcome the Sabbath bride. Boi v'shalom ateret ba'ala, gam b'simcha uvetzola, tov emunei am segula, boi kala. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nikabela. We'll be continuing on page 146 as we remain standing with our call to worship, which is the Baruch Hu. And it's actually quite similar. You know, if you travel in Muslim lands, you hear the call to worship from the minarets. The Baruch Hu is our call to worship. Lai la lai 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 lai. Lai la lai 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 lai. Lai la lai 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 lai. Lai la lai 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 lai. Lai la lai 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 lai. Baruch Hu et Adonai ha-mevorach. Baruch Adonai ha-mevorach, ha-mevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch Adonai ha-mevorach le'olam va'ed. This is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? Baruch atah Adonai ha'ma'ariv aravim. Continuing on page 152 and 53 with the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem, Kivod Malachuto, Leolam Va'ed. Please be seated and join me on page 154 in the V'ahavta. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meodecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shenantam levanecha v'dibarta b'ham b'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha v'derech uvshokbecha uvkumecha ukshartam le'od al yadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisha'arecha leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'tem kedoshim lelochechem ani Adonai Elochechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim lehiot lachem lelohim ani Adonai Elochechem. We continue with our song of redemption. Our song of redemption is Mi Chamocha. It's on page 158. And as one of my teachers, Yitz Greenberg, stresses, Judaism is all about the journey from the bad old days to the good new days, from worshiping idols to worshiping God, from servitude and slavery. I'm going to be talking about the book of Exodus in a little while, to freedom. So we seek redemption. We seek to make progress along that movement. And working toward redemption, working toward the betterment of the world, I always like to say, is a full-time job, 24/6, full-time. 24/6, because on Shabbat, we sit back and appreciate our work. But every day, in traditional Judaism, morning and evening, we sing our song of redemption, the Mi Chamocha, the song that the Israelites sang at the shores of the sea. Mi Chamocha, page 158. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nehedar ba'kodesh, nora tehilot osefele, nora tehilot osefele, malchutecha ra'uvanecha, bokei ayam, lifnei Moshe u'Miriam, ze'elianu ve'ameru, Adonai yimloch, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed v'ne'emar kifada Adonai et Yaakov uge'alo miyad chazak mimenu baruch ata Adonai gal Yisrael. Reading on page 159. Sing the song of men and women joined in understanding and respect, the song of God's miracles, an earth protected and cherished, a gift for our children and the generations to come. The song of a land once ravaged by war, now quiet and content, her soldiers home, to leave no more. The song of a world redeemed, the song of peace. We begin our tefillah, the central prayer of every Jewish service. I often comment about this prayer that if you have this prayer, it's a Jewish service. If you don't have the prayer, it may be a ceremony, like Havdalah, like lighting Hanukkah candles, but this is the prayer. In fact, in the Talmud, it is called ha-tefillah, the prayer. Why is it so central? Because if we were worshiping in ancient times, the way we would relate to God in biblical times is by sacrificing animals 3 times a day at the temple in Jerusalem. When the temple was destroyed by the Romans the last time in the year 70 of the Common Era, the rabbis of the time reformed Judaism from a religion based on animal sacrifice and a priesthood to one based on prayer, reading Torah, reading sacred scriptures, and doing mitzvot, making the world a better place. So this prayer goes by a number of names. One is Hatfilah, the prayer. Another is Amidah, which means the standing prayer. So I'll invite you in the congregation here to rise, and at home to rise or remain seated as is your comfort. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi agi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. 166. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, ve'Konei Hakol, ve'Zocher Chazdei Avot ve'Imahot, Umevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, L'man Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer Umoshia Umagen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Ve'ezrat Sarah. 168. Atagi bor leolam maronai, mechaye hakol ata, Rav lehoshia, Ma'ashiv haruach, umorid hagashem, Mechalkel chayim bechesed, Mechaye hakol berachamim rabim. So mech noflim v'rofei cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato, Lishenei afar. Micha mocha ba'al givurot, umidom melach, melech memit umechaye, umatzmiach Yeshua, v'ne'eman atah l'chayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, mechaye hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, v'kodoshim b'chol yom yechalucha salah. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh. We will pause for a few moments of quiet prayer. You may remain standing while you pray quietly, or you may be seated. Say shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, imru, amen. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, yaseh shalom, shalom. Shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Please be seated. One of the ways, our liturgy changes all the time. I always like to reflect on the fact the Bible never changes, the Talmud never changes, our sacred texts never change, but the Siddur changes. Every movement makes changes in the Siddur. Even the Orthodox make changes. For example, in the Orthodox Siddur, there are prayers for the state of Israel, which clearly would not have been part of an Orthodox Siddur before 1948 because there was no state of Israel. So the Mishaberach, a prayer for healing, traditionally was a prayer said when someone was called for an aliyah to the Torah. But in recent years, thanks, I think in no small part, to the beautiful lyrics of the beautiful version of Debbie Friedman for the Mi Chamocha, this has now become part of our standard liturgy, I would say, in the Reform movement and in the Conservative movement. And I don't know, I'm trying to find. I think I don't have the lyrics in front of me. The lyrics for Mi Chamocha, I will find it in the Torah service. Yeah, page 371. Debbie Friedman's beautiful version. What I think I'll do is, there's only a small group, surprise, surprise, at our congregation this evening. So I'm going to go into the congregation and ask for people's names who are in need of healing, to mention names that are in need of healing. Refuat HaNefesh, healing of spirit. Refuat HaGuf, healing of body. Page 371. Mi sheberach avotenu mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. I love Torah study. Les Schwartz and I were talking about this just as the program was getting started. We've been here studying Torah together for the last 40 years or so. And that's actually what got me to be a serious Jew. I joined this congregation. I was a physicist. I was Jewish, yes, but not terribly interested in Judaism. And my late wife would bring me to services, not exactly kicking and screaming, but definitely moaning and groaning. And then I started studying Torah and just got hooked. And so I want to talk tonight about this week's Torah portion, which is Shemot, which is the opening of the book of Exodus. And interestingly enough, tomorrow morning we have Talmud study beginning at 8 o'clock and Torah study beginning at 8:45. And in our Torah study, we're also studying in great detail a section of this opening parsha, this opening section of Torah. So this week's Torah portion just overflows with fascinating history and drama and theology. And normally what a rabbi will do would be pick one point and really dig in on it. But what I want to do is do a very broad overview of all of the things that are in just this week's Torah portion. There are 54 Torah portions. Just this week, we have slavery. You know, when we were left hanging at the end of the book of Genesis, Joseph of the amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat fame was made prime minister of Egypt. He brought his family down, all of the Israelites, into the land of Egypt. And now, in the book of Exodus, 400 years later, we have a new Pharaoh that has come to power who didn't remember Joseph, who now has enslaved the Israelites living in a separate section of the land of Egypt called Goshen. The Pharaoh is concerned that the Israelites are multiplying, and he's worried that they may arise up against the Pharaoh, so he decides to kill all the baby boys by drowning them in the Nile. And thwarting his plans are Hebrew midwives, Shifra and Puah. We don't actually know if they were Hebrews or they were just midwives to the Hebrews, but they would save the baby boys when they were born. And then the story goes that they were hidden. One of these baby boys that is hidden is the newborn baby Moses. But when his mother decides she can't hide him any longer, she puts him in an ark, a floating a basket, sets him on the Nile, and leaves his older sister, Miriam, to watch out for him. Moses is discovered by Pharaoh's daughter, who is bathing at the Nile, and Pharaoh's daughter decides that she's going to adopt this baby as her own. She looks around, and there's a Hebrew, namely Miriam, Pharaoh's daughter, who, by the way, we understand her name was Batya, daughter of God, asks Miriam, do you know a Hebrew wet nurse who can nurse this newborn baby? And, of course, Miriam knows just the person, Moses' own mother, Yocheved. So Moses now grows up. The story moves along very quickly. He sees an Egyptian taskmaster beating an Israelite, and he kills the Egyptian. He sees two Israelites fighting, and he intervenes with them. And one says, are you going to kill us like you killed the Egyptian? Moses now is afraid because he knows that his killing the Egyptian has become known. So he flees to the land of Midian, where he saves some women, sisters, watering their flock at a well. He marries one of them, and is tending the flock in the Holy Land by the mountain of God, Horeb. And lo and behold, in this mountain, we're going to be talking about this in great detail tomorrow morning, Moses sees a burning bush. And he notices, he's an observant guy, this Moses, that the bush is not consumed. And he hears God speaking to him from the bush. And God says, I'm going to send you on a mission. I'm going to send you to Pharaoh to free the Israelites. And Moses is reluctant to go. And he's coming up with thoughts. He says, well, suppose the Israelites ask me your name. What should I tell them your name is? And we hear a name. Again, we'll talk about this tomorrow. Ehia Asher Ehia. Either I am what I am, I will be what I want to be, I will be what I am what I will be. Hebrew is wonderfully ambiguous. And God says, don't worry, I will be with you. But he still says, what if they don't believe me? So God teaches him a few tricks, turning his rod, his staff, into a serpent, and also making his arm instantly leprous and then healing. And Moses is still whining and doesn't want to go, and he says, well, I'm not a man of words, and the tradition is that he had a speech problem, maybe a stutter, and God gets angry. And it's kind of interesting, this is the first time in the Bible that God gets angry. And he says, all right, take Aaron, your older brother, with you, and Aaron will be your spokesman. And by the way, God tells Moses, I'm going to send you to Pharaoh. Pharaoh's not going to let the people go. I am going to send plagues, God says, onto the people Israel. Onto the Egyptians. And God actually tells Moses the reason for this. God says, by the way, this is not going to work. It's going to be 10 plagues. I can't remember if he warns them there's going to be 10. This is the plagues aren't going to work because I'm going to strengthen Pharaoh's heart so that Pharaoh will not let the people go. And we'll have plague after plague after plague, and we know the reason. The reason is to demonstrate to the Egyptians and to the Israelites that the God of Israel is more powerful than the God of the Egyptians. And I always love to talk during the Passover Seder. Every one of the plagues is directed at a god of Egypt. So just some examples. The Nile, turning the Nile into blood. The Nile was a god of Egypt. There was a frog-headed god. There was a god of one of the major gods of Egypt was Ra, the sun god, so we have a plague of darkness. And of course, Pharaoh and his firstborn son would also be a god, so there was attack directly on them. And so Moses goes to Pharaoh and asks to set the people free, and of course Pharaoh says no. And then Pharaoh adds more tasks to the Israelites, and on until next week's Parsha. So I want to talk a few, what I consider to be the deep lessons of this opening of the book of Exodus. First, we had 4 quick generations. We had Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and then Jacob's sons, including Joseph. Pretty quick. And then all of a sudden we're in Egypt for 400 years. Sometimes we have to wait a long time to see the hand of God. People are always wondering, where is God in my life? Where is God in history? It takes patience to see the hand of God. And also, as Moses notices the bush burning, you have to be observant. It is astounding how many women save Moses' life and enter the story. It's easy to overlook them, but we shouldn't. The midwife saved Moses' life. Moses' mother, Yocheved, saves his life. His sister Miriam saves his life. Pharaoh's daughter saves his life. Later on, in maybe it's next week's portion, his wife will actually save his life. Biblical and Hebrew and Talmudic Judaism are male-centered, but we need to read the stories carefully to notice the role of women. The burning bush. You know, what's the story with a burning bush? Why a burning bush of all the ways that God would appear? So the rabbis say it was a test to see if Moses would notice that a bush was burning and not consumed. Presumably with lightning strikes, to see something burning wasn't all that unusual, but Moses would have to notice that it was not consumed. And why a bush? The Hebrew word for bush is sneh, which is similar to the Hebrew word Sinai. And also people the rabbis observed that you can put your hand into a thorn bush and nothing will happen, but if you pull it out too quickly, that's when you can get cut and scratched. So entering Egypt in this case was easy, leaving Egypt not so easy. I mentioned God's first anger is at Moses. This is the first time in the Bible God is recorded as getting angry. By the way, the Hebrew idiom for God getting angry is God's nose gets red. If you think of God just as purely spiritual, in the Bible is very, very anthropomorphic. God doesn't get angry at Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. God doesn't get angry at Cain for murdering his brother. God doesn't get angry at the generation of Noah. It's not recorded. He winds up, destroying life, but doesn't record that God was angry. God doesn't get angry at Jacob and Esau, at Joseph's brothers, at Pharaoh and the taskmasters. The first recorded example of God getting angry is at Moses. And sometimes, like Moses, we are reluctant to do the things that we know God wants us to do. God's anger is not at our failings, but at our lack of confidence in moving ahead and doing the things that we know we need to be doing and we know God wants us to do. There is a wonderful discussion and mystery around the name that God reveals, Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. And as I mentioned, it can have lots and lots of different meanings. I will be, what I need to be, what tomorrow demands. We could talk all night and all day about what this name means. And it seems to be directed only at Moses. Moses asked, what should I tell the people? But there's not one example where Moses actually uses that name. It seems to be in response to what Moses needs to hear from God. I will be with you, and I will be what I need to be and what is demanded of me. Don't think you can easily figure it out. And while we're having struggle figuring things out, the text says God strengthens or hardens Pharaoh's heart. So is this a fair fight? The fight of God versus Pharaoh? Why didn't God just change Pharaoh's mind? Pharaoh wakes up one morning and said, what was I thinking? Who needs these Israelite slaves? Let them go. That's not what happens. It's a fight between God and the gods of Egypt. It's a fight to convince Pharaoh to let the people go. And the rabbis say, if it was purely a fight between God and Pharaoh, Pharaoh couldn't help but lose quickly. So God strengthens Pharaoh to make it more of a fair fight. But there's all kinds of problems that the Egyptians are punished. And is it appropriate that Egyptians are punished in this battle of God versus Pharaoh? Finally, Rabbi David Wolpe has written about the path of Moses becoming someone who doesn't say anything, who uses actions and not words, to a man of words only. Even in the Nile, when Moses is in the basket, the text doesn't say that Pharaoh's daughter heard him crying. It says she saw him crying. Moses' coming of age, the whole story of him growing up, we don't hear a word about it. It's wrapped in silence. The Egyptian beats a Hebrew. A taskmaster is beating a Hebrew. Presumably Moses is a prince of Egypt. He could step in and stop him, just order him to stop. But he doesn't. He actually kills the Egyptian. Moses saves the daughters of Midian at the well without saying a word. Moses is a reluctant prophet. When God asks him to go to Pharaoh, he says, I'm not a man of word. I can't really speak well. Every plague that Moses introduces in Egypt is brought about with an action, holding the staff and so on, not Moses simply speaking the plague. Even the 10 Commandments are called the 10 sayings. God is a God of words. It's not called the 10 Commandments in Hebrew. It would be the Aseret Mitzvot. If it were 10 Commandments, it's the Aseret Hadibrot. It's God's 10 utterances. God is a God of words. God creates the universe with words, and Moses is having trouble catching up. Moses, when he gets angry, seeing the Israelites worshiping the golden calf, doesn't speak to them and admonish them. His first instinct is he smashes the tablets. Moses crafts the second set by hand, so at least he now has an introduction to the world of words. Moses later on is told to speak to a rock to get it to issue water, and he strikes the rock, and that's what the Torah understands as the reason Moses is not allowed to enter the promised land. But the 5th book of the 5 books of Moses is called Devarim, which means words. So the 5th book, by the time Moses is now 120 years old, is entirely Moses' words. So Moses' story is a model of striking out and hitting to speaking and using words. So if this whets your appetite, and I hope it does, I invite you to join us tomorrow morning in study of Torah. If you go on the Temple's website, you will find the link, I hope. And Rabbi Lisa Bach, our colleague, will be leading Talmud study, and I'll be leading Torah study both this week and next week. I promise you will never think of Judaism, God, and Torah and religion quite in the same way once you immerse yourselves in words of Torah. There is a blessing in Jewish tradition, Baruch atah Adonai, hamlamed Torah la'amo Yisrael. Blessed are you, Adonai, the teacher of Torah, to his people Israel. We will be moving toward the conclusion of the service. I don't know if we have any announcements. No, we don't have any announcements, I am told. So we'll be moving toward the conclusion of the service with the Aleinu on page 586 at the bottom. And I will invite the congregation to rise. So it's 586, and then the very last verse is at the bottom of 598, as we'll face the ark. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, la'tet gedula liotzer breishit, shalo asanu kogoye ha'aratzot, v'lo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shalo sam chelkenu kahem, v'goralenu k'chol hamonam, va'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, lifnei melech, Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, V'ne'emar, V'haya Adonai, Lemelech al kol ha'aretz, V'yom ha'hu, Yeh Adonai echad, U'shemo echad. Please be seated. The Kaddish Yatom, the Mourner's Kaddish, is found on page 598. And our custom here is, as I read names, if this is someone, if you in the congregation are here to remember, I will invite you to rise. And at home, you can also rise when you hear the names. For those whose yahrzeit, whose anniversary falls on this Shabbat, and they are Terry Baker, Estelle Berg, Paul Blair, Bruce Blum, Helen Bookbinder, Jacob Caswell, Morton Epstein, Robert Freeman, Frieder Glotzer, Charles Grant, Anna Gumperitz, Agi Haas, Joseph Hausfeld, Sarah Hausfeld, Gertrude Joseph, Abe Krupka, Nancy Lee, Shirley Lower, Harry Lowy, Nancy Marks, Joseph Marks, Nicole Novak, Kaler, Saul Schacht, Art Schaffler, Leon Sider, Leonard Snarch, Ben Steinberg, Ruth Sternick, Clara Wander. These are the people whose yahrzeit occurs during this time. Those who have passed in the last month for Shloshim are Charlotte Lieb, sister of Richard and Royce Singer, Muntz, and the grandfather of Lindsay Oz, Sidney Schiffman. The Oz, the printing here is a little strange. Husband of Ruth Ann Bagan, father of Andy and Karen Bagan. Joyce Lippert, father of Daniel Scott, Daniel married to Scott Halpern, and Janice White, aunt of Jan Iceland. Anyone else here want to remember someone especially on this Shabbat? So I will recite the Mourner's Kaddish, and then our tradition is to rise together as Osei Shalom, as a way of saying Kaddish for our friends, and as a way of saying Kaddish for all of those who have no one to say Kaddish for them. Yit Gadal v'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah. V'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayachon v'yomechon uv'chayei de kol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uvizman kariv v'yimru amen. Yehesh Shmei Rabbah mevorach. Leolam ulalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yithaleh v'yithalal. Shmei de kudashah b'richu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush b'chata v'nechamata. Damiran bi'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shamaya. V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav. Hu ya'asei shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Please be seated. So, I promised on some of my classes to do something at the close of this service that has never been done in the history of Judaism. And I know that some of my friends think that I'm going to sing one of my wacky songs. I get a lot of requests about those songs, and I sing them anyway. And specifically, Adon Olam lends itself to a lot of melodies. And actually, years and years ago, when Michael Anatol was our cantor, it was kind of a Shabbaton at a park honoring his 18th anniversary. And of course, he was an attorney, so we put him on trial for murdering Adon Olam. And one of the accusations that we presented, which I would never do tonight, I just want you to know I would never ever do this, was sing Adon Olam like this. Adon Olam, Hashem Alach. But I would never do that. So what I want to do is sing Adon Olam to a much more traditional, inherently Jewish melody. Adon Olam Asher. You know that one, right? I'm sorry to tell you that was a German drinking song. But that's our melody, and we're sticking to it. It's on page 625, and right after we sing Adon Olam together, I will have something which I guarantee has never been done in the history of Judaism. Adon. Now I can't do it. Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivra Li'et Nasa B'chafso Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Ve'acharei Kichlot HaKol Levado Yimloch Nora V'hu Haya V'hu Hoveh V'hu Yihiyeh B'tifara V'hu Echad V'ein Sheni Laham Shilo Lahach Bira Beli Reshit Beli Tachlit V'lo ha'oz v'ha'misra v'hu eli v'chai go'ali v'tzur chevli b'yet tzara v'hu nisi umanos li manat kosi b'yom ekra b'yado afkid ruchi b'yet ishan v'ya'ira v'im ruchi geviati Adonai li Velo ira. So, as you know, Christmas came very, very late this year. I know a lot of people are always asking me, when does Christmas fall this year? This year, of course, it's the 21st day of Tevet, which is very, very late. Next year, Christmas is very early, on the first day of Tevet. So we Jews, following the Hebrew calendar, have a tough time remembering when Christmas falls. But as you know, people are always talking about how the Jews would go out for Chinese food on Christmas. And this, I'm pretty sure, dates to the idea that all the restaurants were closed on Christmas except for Chinese restaurants. Now, we have a modest oneg, given COVID, that we'll be celebrating here at the synagogue. And so I thought, in the spirit of the season, we should have fortune cookies for our oneg. And when I ordered these, they arrived a few days ago. And for those of you that are very, very observant, some of these fortune cookies are actually pre-broken if it's against your observance of Sabbath to actually break the fortune cookies. So I'm going to open the fortune cookie on the bima and see what our fortune will be. First, we'll say the blessing, of course. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Oh my gosh. You will not believe what's in this fortune. This is exactly what is in the fortune. I will ask you to rise. First time ever. It says it right here. Yivarechecha Adonai vayishmarecha. May God bless you and protect you. Yair Adonai panav elecha vichuneka. May God's face shine upon you, and may God be gracious to you. Yisar Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. With God's face lifted before you, may God grant you, our community, our state, our nation, our world, the blessing of shalom, of wholeness, of peace, and shlemut, of wholeness. Ken Yehi Ratzon. This is our fortune, I promise. I wish you a Shabbat Shalom, and thank you for inviting me, Rabbi Diamond, to the pulpit. And we will go and have our little oneg here with fortune cookies. And I hope you enjoy your dinners wherever they happen to be this evening. Shabbat Shalom.